Hi there and welcome. And today I'm talking about the Liquify tool in Photoshop. And um, I think it's one of the first things people realize about Liquify is that you can do some pretty weird and crazy things with it. And you've probably seen images where people have done this sort of thing. And yeah, it's great fun. Um, but not a huge amount of use to us in professional editing terms. Um, For the pro editor, Liquify is often a tool which enables us to make very subtle changes and enhancements to shapes within the image, and particularly when we're dealing with images of people, we can make subtle changes to um, the facial features or to areas of the body. But we really want to be careful to preserve the sort of what, what we're always trying to do with Photoshop really is preserve the natural organic look of the subject, but just make small enhancements to it which improve the image. So we're using the subtle hand with Liquify. And here I'm just going to take you through a few examples of the kind of things that we can do with Liquify in a sort of practical way. So here I've got a portrait image which has already been edited. I go to my collection of filters and choose Liquify. And I get the Liquify interface. And the first thing I'm going to point out to you is this face aware Liquify tab here in the Liquify interface. And this is kind of the, I suppose you could say this is a sort of easy version of Liquify when you're dealing with a human face. Because Photoshop is able to analyze it detects and analyzes a human face in the image, and then it gives us access to these areas, features of the face, the eyes, nose, mouth, and the overall face shape. And I'm just going to go through making some changes to this just to sort of illustrate. So, for example, I could decide to push the eye size up, and of course we need to be very careful to make sure that the eyes retain the similar size. The eye height I can push a little bit. Eye width, and the eye tilt, or the angle of the eye in relation to the face. If I move down to the nose, I can work with the nose height. I'd be surprised if I wanted to do much with that here. The nose width, I can pull the width of the nose in or expand it. Again, I'm less likely to want to do anything with that. The smile, I probably wouldn't bother with because it gives a very sort of artificial effect which isn't really very convincing. I can work individually on the size of the upper lip. I can push the lower lip. That's the other way. This lady already has quite a wide mouth, I would say, so I don't think I would probably not be wanting to do a huge amount on mouth width. Mouth height I could push a little bit. But I hope you can see that when I'm using this, I'm making fairly small changes. I can just drop the size of her forehead, which will pull her hair down as well. Chin height I often find quite useful. It's the other way, forwards to reduce it, which is slightly counterintuitive. But this, I often find this can give the effect that it kind of slims the face down a little bit, which can be attractive. I can pull the jawline in, which does the same thing. It just makes them look a bit thinner. And I can use face width as well. Although that, as you can see, if I go too far with that, starts to look pretty crazy. So I could perhaps make a fairly minor change to face width there. So these are the kind of things I can do with Face Aware Liquify. And if I just uncheck my preview, you can see the original image, and this is what we've done. So this is, again, this is the sort of easy interface to Liquify, where Photoshop does pretty much all the work for you. And it can be useful, but strongly recommend you to use very sparingly. So we'll save that work, and we'll just call this Face Aware Liquify. Now, if we will just make a copy of that, and call this Liquify Tools. We could then, if we run the filter again, you'll find that the on the left hand side of the interface we have the actual Liquify tools themselves, and these are where we're going to use these directly to alter areas of the image. And one of the things that I will probably be most concerned with in this image is I noticed that this the line of her hair is a bit uneven, to say the least. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to use the this is the forward warp tool, and if I just check my brush pressure, which I want to be fairly low, density quite low, because each brush stroke I want to be, you know, have a fairly sort of light effect. And so if I push with my brush, you'll begin to see that I can push outwards on this line of her hair, and I can also pull inwards. And I'm not trying to make this look sort of totally, you know, like a sort of perfect line, because that's, you know, it's going to start to look a bit unnatural, and I don't want that. But what I do want is to just improve the appearance of this line so that visually, when we respond to the image, we respond to this nice line, and it doesn't appear to be quite so sort of crooked. And again, to emphasize, small subtle changes which gradually sort of build up And if I drop the preview, I toggle that on and off, hopefully you'll be able to see that we've just smoothed this line out. We've just made it a bit more kind of pleasing. I'm just going to push in on that a little bit. Okay. Other thing I can do now is I can use the smooth tool, and what this will do is it will, given a sort of bunch of Liquify changes, if I just run this over the area where I've been working, it will just kind of try to even those changes out. And give a smoother effect to them. But you do, as with most things in Photoshop, you do need to sort of experiment with this a little bit just to see how it's working for you. Okay, so that's a good example of just using the forward warp tool to improve a line in the image. And there's another area on her nose here where I might decide to see if you can just follow the cursor here, this line here down her nose and this shadow. I'm just wondering if I would like to just very gently push that over and straighten it slightly. Yep. So what I've done is I've just evened out the line of this shadow here, which I think that's helped. And so once again, it's a barely perceptible change, which improves the sort of regularity of lines and shapes in the image, and that's the kind of thing that we're often looking to do, just to improve it. Toggle our preview off and on again so you can see the change there. Okay, and if I just drop that off and drop this was the face aware Liquify, where what we've really done is we've just slimmed the face down ever so slightly. We've pushed the eye, we've made the eyes slightly more prominent, and we've just slimmed her face down slightly. And with this pass, which was using the Liquify tools, we've really just addressed this line here, and also this line on the nose, which we've just improved slightly. Okay, let's look at another. This is another portrait image here, and if we run Liquify on here, I'm just going to show you another couple of examples of the sort of things we might want to do. Things like twirl, probably not, could be useful, but most of the time not. Pucker and bloat. I might, for example, this model's ear is a slightly unusual shape, and I could, one of the things I could do is using the pucker tool. If I just get my brush to about the size of her ear and just click on it, you can see that has the effect. I'm going to exaggerate now so you can see the effect, but that has the effect of it kind of pulls the object we've selected down. Um, Also, at any point, I can use the reconstruct tool. If I want to go backwards and undo what I've done, I can just run the reconstruct tool over the area that I've changed. But I might decide with pucker that if I just sort of gently do a couple of pucker moves on there, it just reduces the size of the ear, which might be nice. Equally, I can, if I wanted to, we'll reconstruct that. If I wanted to go the other way, and if I had a sort of facial feature which I wanted to enlarge, I might experiment with using bloat, which will kind of do the opposite, and it will push, as you can hopefully see, it's just expanding the ear, which I don't think I want to do in this case, but just to show you that you can do that too. So if I just reconstruct that, I think I'm probably more likely to, in practice, I might decide to just use those couple of small pucker moves just to reduce the size of the ear. But generally speaking with this, I think a lot of the time I'm looking for lines, as we showed before, I'm looking for lines in the image that could be improved. So I'm thinking, like in this area on her shoulder, I might decide to just straighten this line of her shoulder a little bit. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use I don't want to affect this area where we can see the window frame behind her. I don't want to distort that. So what I'm going to do is use freeze mask, and what I'm going to do here is I'm just masking this area, which means that any gestures I make with the other tools aren't going to affect this area. I'll just zoom in a bit. So that's really the intention of the freeze. It just means I'm kind of freezing this adjacent area so that it won't be affected by any changes I make. And now, if I was to use my forward walk tool, and just do a little bit of work evening out this line of her shoulder. Pulling that down a little bit. Then when I've finished, I can come along with my Thaw mask tool, and that's going to remove the mask area. And so I've been able to make my changes and just improve this line a little bit without distorting the area of the window frame which is immediately behind it. Okay, so that's it really for this one. Just some examples of using the Liquify tools. I might, for example, just looking at her chin here and her neck, Uh, Another good example of the kind of thing I might want to do is just work on pulling this the line of her chin in gently. I'm just making her chin slightly smaller, slightly less prominent, and I'm just pulling up this line of her neck, smoothing that line out and just sort of slimming it down slightly. And of course, I can use the face aware liquify on the chin, but I certainly can't use it on the neck. So the tools, once you get the hang of the tools, they're much more sort of versatile, really, because you can use them on any area of the image. And if we take our preview off, we can see the original, and that's the effect of what we've done. I might make some warp moves in the interest of perhaps just improving the line of this hair, which is a little bit kind of raggedy. So once again, it's really a question of just looking at your image, looking at lines and shapes in your image, and asking yourself, you know, is there any way I could just make that a little bit better, just a little bit nicer? But I hope you'll agree that, you know, like a change like that to her chin, the consumer is not going to be aware of that. Or you can see the hair, what I've done with the hair there. The consumer is not even going to notice that. But it just makes our image look a bit better, and that's what we're looking for. Okay, so we'll save that, and I think, oh yes, there was just one more example I had for you. On this portrait image, this hasn't been edited, but I just thought I'd show you. This is a sort of classic Liquify case, where as you can see this t-shirt, this garment she's got on. We've got quite a nice straight line on this left hand side on her shoulder and her chest, but here the garment has just kind of hasn't come straight, and it's a bit distracting, and I don't really like it. So I can very easily use Liquify. And if I just zoom in a bit on that area, once again I'm going to use my forward warp tool, and I'm just going to begin working on this garment hem, I suppose it is, really, isn't it? It's the hem of the garment. To even out this line, so that I want it to look a little bit more like this on the other side. So I just use my warp tool and just gently either sort of pull down or push upwards until I can see that I'm changing the line so that it looks straight and it isn't distracting. Um, and I just work away gently on that until until I feel happy with it. Something a bit like that. And then once again you can use preview just to see what we've done. That's actually quite a substantial change really, isn't it? But to reiterate again that our consumer of the image is not going to notice what we've done there. We can also, I could see what smooth tool does, but in fact in this case you sometimes find that smooth tool doesn't quite give you what you want. It can be very good, the smooth tool, but it doesn't always work quite the way I want it to. So in fact, most of the time I spend in Liquify, I'm just working with the forward warp tool, which I find to be probably the most versatile and easy to use of the Liquify tools. And so we just keep working away on that until we're happy with it. Just check the preview again, see what we've done, and just save that. And then if we toggle this layer off, there's the original problem, and now I would say that's completely disappeared, and we've got this very nice straight line, so it's kind of symmetrical with the other side of the garment, and it just looks good now, and our consumer isn't going to notice it at all. So I just chose that as I think that's a sort of perfect example of one of the things that Liquify is really, really good for. So there we are, that's it. Just not attempting to chapter and verse on Liquify, but just trying to give you a useful introduction so that you can see the kind of things that we do in the real world, the practical use of Liquify, and what an extraordinary, amazing tool it is for just making these subtle changes to shapes and lines of various elements and features in our image. Okay, so thanks for watching and listening, and see you next time.